Good morning and welcome to our webcast today. My name is Heidi Decker. I'm the Marketing Manager for SmartDeploy, and we've got a great webcast for you today. It's part 3 of our Device Drivers webcast series. Today we're going to be talking about, we're going to do some demos, and we're going to talk about why the same driver can't work across multiple manufacturers. We have a few people in the room here today. We have Spencer Dunford, our Director of Sales, Eric Nymark, a systems engineer for us. We have Alan Marsh, our CTO, and Aaron Suzuki, SmartDeploy CEO and founder. Just a few quick housekeeping items. This session is set to be 30 minutes long with some time at the end for Q&A. So please feel free to just send your questions in throughout the presentation using the Q&A or the chat features on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll get to those at the end. Also, I will be sending out a follow-up email tomorrow with a link to the recorded session. So if for some reason you need to step away, you can catch up on that tomorrow. I'm also going to do a few quick poll questions while we're doing kind of our intro here, just to get an idea of who's attending today and what your current scenario looks like. So I'm going to hand it over to Aaron Suzuki to get started.
Thanks, Heidi. I will say the least of anyone here, at least I hope. But thanks a lot, everyone, for joining us. We have a unique product that is informed by unique expertise, and I guess as much as we're interested in telling you about the product, of course, we're also here to share what we know about this domain with you. We've been doing this for a while, almost 10 years, and have amassed an employee base of about 100 people. The product grew out of a service offering that we still provide, and saw that we could systematically solve that problem with software. So we didn't just have this spontaneous idea. It was really informed by pretty consistent demand. And we've been at this for a while and have been recognized with some nice awards and been adding a lot of customers for the unique offering and approach that we have, unique architecture as well. So today we're going to talk about drivers and what's unique about them. We have a little review that we're going to do around device drivers and recapping what we've talked about in the past briefly. Then we're going to do a quick comparison of HP, Lenovo, and Dell drivers and compare a couple different methods for performing that. We'll talk about our unique approach and what makes that cool, and give you guys a chance to get a free pair of Skull Candy earbuds, and of course leave plenty of time at the end for Q&A. And as we said, we've got 30 minutes for the presentation, 10 minutes for Q&A, but we'll stick around for a few minutes, and if we don't get to your question, we'll be sure we follow up with you afterward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Alan Marsh to enlighten us.
Thanks, Aaron. So this slide we had in both of our first part 1 and part 2 of managing device drivers, and if you missed those, they're on our website. In the first part we talked about how, different device driver management strategies, and in the second part we kind of dove in detail into what makes up a device driver INF. So if some of what I talk about today seems a little weird, watching that part 2 will definitely help you understand what I'm talking about today. So what are device drivers? They're the binaries that enable a device to actually function. They're written by the people that physically make the components, so the network card, the video card, whatever. And while they post theirs on their website, like Intel and NVIDIA, the system manufacturers like Dell, HP, Lenovo also then customize those drivers sometimes and post them on their websites. So that's what we're going to look at today and see how those device drivers are different. And so Heidi wants to give me control. Oh, sorry. Let me share my desktop real quick. Okay, sorry about that. So this first driver comparison we're going to look at is an example of the component manufacturer's INF and how an OEM has customized that INF. So on the left side of this screen is a video driver from NVIDIA, and on the right side is the exact same versioned driver for a Lenovo workstation. And you can see kind of right off the bat that they're a little bit different. But in a lot of the cases, the Lenovo one has international support, so that's what a lot of this extra information is. But when we get down here to the plug-and-play sections, you can see that a lot of them actually cover the same plug-and-play IDs. And so what some people do when they try to cover a lot of different hardware with a driver blob strategy where they have many machines, but they want to have the least number of drivers to install all those machines, is they go and grab the driver from the component manufacturer's website, in this case NVIDIA. And so that way this driver covers every card NVIDIA's ever made, or at least currently. So you can put that into your driver repository, and it gets used on all your systems, and all your video cards, at least get installed. But in this case, we'll show that, if you use that strategy versus if you use the INF that's provided by Lenovo in this case, that you have slightly different outcomes, even with the same, device driver binaries. So either one of these INFs would install on a given NVIDIA card. There's a lot more sections in the NVIDIA one, but the thing I want to show is down here, Lenovo makes some customizations that weren't in the original NVIDIA INF. And specifically what caught my attention is this disable 4 gig tag limit. And I'm not exactly sure what that does, but that's probably something Lenovo found in testing, that they thought, in their scenario with that card in their machine, that, something either didn't work or they didn't want it to work or whatever. So those are the kind of customizations that the OEMs make during their testing of the products. And so you're only going to get that if you use the INF that came from, Lenovo versus NVIDIA. There's a bunch of other changes in these INFs as well, but that's an idea of, what is different. So if we look at another example, this is a comparison of the current Dell Latitude business model and Lenovo business model, the E6420 and the T420. These are roughly the exact same machines currently offered on their websites, and this is the network driver for those two machines. Same network driver, same device from Intel, but obviously at different point in time, the two different OEMs have different versions posted on their website. So currently, Dell has the newer driver on their website, and the Lenovo is a little bit older. Oh yeah, sorry, this is the one where, that's funny, yeah, the Lenovo version, the date is newer, but the version's actually older. And so what I want to talk about with these two is that currently the only way the OEMs can control whether their modified drivers install on their devices or not is to add the subsys keys, which we talked about in part 2 of device drivers, so that they have these longer string matches. And so currently that's the only way that they can say, this might be the subsys key for Dell, and this one over here might be the subsys key for your Lenovo. And so each one of these INFs would only install in those cases. But each one of these INFs also has the short string in it. And in the case where, sometimes components change across the history, across the lifespan of a particular unit. So let's say, for whatever reason, Lenovo slightly revved the network card in the T420, and they hadn't come out with a new driver yet that had that new subsys key in it. Well, then they would be using this shorter plug-and-play string match. And in that case, if you had both of these drivers in your driver repository, then it would be up to which driver is newer as to which one gets used. And so in this case, the date wins, and so your Dell would end up using your Lenovo driver. because it has a newer date, even though it's versioned older, which is pretty interesting. So it doesn't happen all the time, but we've definitely seen it, especially with video cards, where the subsys keys will change over the lifespan of that card in a particular product. And so, this is a real scenario. I don't expect everybody's out there buying Dells and Lenovo's at the same time necessarily, but this gives you an idea of some of the things that can happen. More specific, supposedly with Windows 8, they're going to add ability for the OEMs to lock down these INFs so that they only work for them. So like this would have a OEM equals Lenovo in it, and that would mean that INF could only work on Lenovo, which would be really neat to see, but we'll have to see if that happens or not. But for now, this is where we're at. So one more example. This is probably more likely, is that you're buying ThinkPads, but then for some one-off scenarios, you need to buy a rugged machine. And so you go out and you buy some Toughbooks. And here we're looking at the T410 and the Toughbook CF31, which were the same, they're one generation old, but they were the same generation of machines. And this is the network driver for the two of them. And so they cover about the same things. The Lenovo driver is obviously a lot newer because Panasonic doesn't touch theirs as often. And it has a couple more subsys keys in it. But the thing is that for the Toughbook, the subsys key that it actually has isn't in this INF, so it ends up using this short string. So if you had both of these device drivers in your driver repository at the same time, your Toughbook would end up using your ThinkPad device driver. And these INFs aren't that different, as you can see on the right, but there's some fundamental differences where Panasonic adjusted the transmit and receive buffers for that network card, whereas Lenovo probably left them as they were from Intel. And so, either that's going to cause a problem or not, but it's another example of how, Panasonic probably found something in testing and said, oh, this is something we want to change. And then, you think that you've imported that device driver into your repository and you load the machine and device manager looks good and you don't really notice. And then you go down the road and you start having these problems with the NICs in your Toughbooks and you don't know why. Well, this is what happened, is that you didn't end up using the network driver that you meant to use. So my final example is a video driver from Intel for current generation desktops, specifically an HP 8200 Elite, and then actually a workstation from Lenovo. Both current generation hardwares. These are almost the same video driver. The one from Lenovo is just slightly newer. But both of these, neither OEM customizes the plug-and-play IDs, so they're all short string. So there's no way for these INFs to apply to Lenovo or HP. There's no difference. This basically is the INF from Intel. And yet, whether it was through customization or just the change in the version of this INF, there's a lot of different settings in these two INFs. There's different install sections that get called. There's different registry settings that get called. But we'll take a look here and see that in this section, which does get run, HP, for whatever reason, added in a whole bunch of OpenGL settings for specific programs. So, I don't know, some of these are games, which isn't that, exciting, but Photoshop, for example, that's in both of them. So Cinebench, Lightmark, all these settings. So, these are pre-configured settings for certain OpenGL programs for the HP driver. And, would having that installed on your Lenovo cause a problem or not? I don't know, but in this case, the Lenovo driver is newer, and so if you had both these drivers there at the same time, your HP will end up using the Lenovo driver, and you wouldn't have all these additional settings that HP put in there. And so oftentimes those things get exposed through their little control panels or whatever, and you can make changes, but they just wouldn't be there in that case. And once again, you're using, the wrong version of the driver than, maybe you thought you were, because it's up to Windows plug and play if both of these drivers are there at the same time, during deployment. So that's my demo, and I think I'll turn it over to Eric now to talk about how SmartDeploy handles some of these, or how we've chosen to handle some of these scenarios with SmartDeploy.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. So, as Alan has showed, there's and even talked about, there's many different ways to handle drivers with your image deployments. And our first webcast in the series, we talked about some of those different ways that offer varying amounts of control on what INF is used. There's an image, or a hardware-specific image, which gives you total control over the device drivers that are being applied to a specific machine, but that opens you up to managing multiple images and having to deal with those hardware sets over time, updating the images, etc. And kind of what we demoed with the collection in INFs is there's a blob method where you can have one image, which either in an external repository or inside the image itself houses different drivers that would make that image work on any machine in your environment. So that opens you up to that plug-and-play selection, I guess, logic that they use. And you don't always end up with the correct driver, which could cause problems on different hardware types. The SmartDeploy approach to this was to use an exacting model of, we know exactly what drivers are going to be put on each machine through a segregated, logically laid out driver management portal called the Platform Manager, with things called the platform packs, which actually house the driver files themselves. And those are broken into manufacturer, model, and OS. I'm going to switch to a demo here now just to show you how those are utilized and how you would obtain those driver repositories. So first, the obtaining of the driver repository is done through our website. We pre-create different driver packs for standard business class models. We talked a bit about the Lenovo T420. I'll use that as an example. You go up here, you select your Lenovo T420 pack for multiple OS support. You download it, and you would end up with a file much like this. So as you can see here, it's broken out into the manufacturer, the model, and the operating system. And to control whether or not this platform pack will be used, we use WMI queries, and actually, at deployment time, check the physical device that we're deploying the image to, make sure the manufacturer type is Lenovo. That passes, we step down to the next level, and we'll check to make sure that the model type or the version for WMI in the case of Lenovo is ThinkPad T420. So we know those two things match. Say we're deploying a Windows 7 image. This subset of drivers is exactly what is utilized on that machine. These all come from the OEM. So they're the configured drivers and the way that they intended them to be on the machine. So that may open it up to power settings in the video card, or going from sleep to on state. Maybe Lenovo has something different in their BIOS that they modify that video driver for, so that comes up clean and you don't end up with a black screen or something to that effect. But the overall goal of this is to have driver support for all the different machines in your environment so that you can utilize one image and deploy that to anything. And to do that, we have a default platform pack. The default platform pack is what we call it, but it basically has support for many different manufacturers and models. In the case of applying this, we use the same logic as stepping through with the WMI queries to identify the manufacturer, the model, and then we know the operating system that's being deployed based on the image. As you can see here, these two different models, so a Latitude E6510 and a ThinkPad T410, the same generation, using much of the same hardware, the same chipset, the same network devices. See, we have the same driver here that we would have here. So in this scenario, instead of having plug and play, sort out which driver is better, which one's newer, you know, which one meets the subsys key, we know exactly what's going to be on the endpoint, so we have that full control over everything. Let's switch back to the slides. Yeah, so the hardware independence piece is reached through those platform packs, and we have granular control over all the drivers that are being applied to a given machine. This just kind of illustrates the SmartDeploy approach to imaging in general. Product was designed to be as simple as possible, which is why those driver repositories are up on our website, easily downloadable. You don't have to go through the headache of packaging device drivers or anything like that. The product has such a light footprint, it can be installed on your everyday workstation. So the machine that you do email with, you can also turn into a machine that can meet all your imaging needs as well. You would install SmartDeploy there, you can manage the drivers, the image, the media, and then that can create media that directly goes to a target device. So you have a lock-up, reinstall, installation procedure. And then optionally, you can tie into network resources and do deployments over the network, targeting specific machines, and get that same driver management piece out quickly and efficiently. So now we're going to transition over to Spencer Dunford. Let's go, Spencer.
Well, thanks very much, Eric and Alan, Aaron, and Heidi. So we've got, I mean, from my perspective, I think it's really cool to see all the low-level details about how Eric and Alan's team deal with all of these drivers, but it needs to translate into customer benefits, and we see that over and over and over, and in fact, when we came out with this product, this is what the market told us was most important for them. So we tried to do some concrete things around that, and one of those, as you see on this slide, was a test that we did with a third-party vendor about speed of deployment and comparing different deployment products. So, you know, us against several of the other market-leading products, we were the fastest of all of them. And we were the fastest for a few different reasons, but most importantly, it was centered all around device drivers and device driver management. So as you think about deployment and your deployment projects, obviously if you can get more done in a shorter amount of time, more quickly and reliably, you're going to be better off. So take those factors into account when you choose your deployment product. So we talked about the blob method, but the SmartDeploy method kind of gets you the best of both worlds, where customers want to have one single repository that has drivers for everything. Well, Alan highlighted some of the problems that can happen with that, and you'll spend more time in the long run dealing with those things. Versus SmartDeploy, you can still have a single file that contains device driver support for everything. It's just that we do it so that every end device gets exactly and precisely the drivers that it needs to have. So this is a random smattering of customers that we have today, and like I said before, it was the market and our customers that told us what's so important about SmartDeploy. Like Eric highlighted, it's really great to be able to manage independently hardware and software specific information, but it's the customers came back that said, geez, these platform packs really saved me, and this made this product be the most amazing thing out there, and so on. So at a top level, here's how we simplify driver management. Of course, they're pre-created for you, but we've done all the service work of certifying and making sure that all those drivers work on all these different machines that you have, and every end system only gets the drivers that you need. So oftentimes this can be a tedious, time-consuming task that takes a really experienced resource to know what they're doing with all these drivers. Generally, we find customers, they'll download drivers from various places, and as long as the machine boots, and it doesn't blue screen, and device manager may or may not look all perfect and clean, they just run with it. But the problem is, down the road, IT will spend more time troubleshooting an issue with, you know, Susie's computer off in the corner, and they don't realize that the fundamental problem is related to their overall process. So with our product, you can choose a single image that can deploy to any device, and that's logically and physically separate from the drivers, and you manage those two things independently. Industry best practices are all baked into every phase of the product. Everything's wizard-driven and easy to use, and we're a great team. You're easy to get a hold of, and we provide high value, high service to the questions you guys need answers to. So my challenge to you guys is try this thing. We want to reward you for your time and showing up to these webcasts. So we'd love to talk to you further and make sure that this is, the right thing for your environment. And everybody's environment is pretty diverse, and that's one of the biggest benefits of SmartDeploy, is it's the most flexible product out there. We don't have a single customer that we haven't been able to work with because our product was too complicated or not powerful enough to fit in their environment. So we'd love to talk to you. Sign up for a free 30-minute demo. We do these weekly, or if we need to schedule custom time for you guys to work with your schedules, that's not a problem. Love to talk to you. Download the product. It runs for 15 days. It's fully functioning. If we need to extend the trial, we can do that. And if you decide this works for you, we'll give you a discount of 20% off MSRP for any purchases that you make through the end of March. So for more information, of course, SmartDeploy.com, that's got all the platform packs. It's got guidance on how to use them, the free trial. Certainly we have the DeployCentral.com as our community forum with a bunch of great information there. And we've got a growing network of partners as well. So if you're interested in becoming a partner or have a partner you'd like to work with, you can learn more at partner.smartdeploy.com.
Thanks, Spencer. Great. So that brings us real close up to the 30-minute mark, but like we said, we'll stick around for some Q&A. So if you have some questions, please feel free to just ask them through the chat. If they're specifically related to our product, to SmartDeploy, that's great. If they're, more technical driver type questions and you have questions about the stuff that Alan and Eric covered today, please feel free to send those in. I'm going to just kind of read these and we'll answer them. So Michael wants to know, does SmartDeploy tie into SCCM, and if so, how? Is it plugins to SCCM or a separate import?
Yeah, so SmartDeploy was built up pretty standard industry technology. So we use the Windows imaging file format, which is WIM, created by Microsoft. Great file format, single instance storage at the file level. Thing that we use that WIM file format, that image can be imported into the System Center Configuration Manager. For the boot media, we also use a highly customized version of Windows P. So instead of booting a device and getting up to Windows P and you have a basic command prompt, well, we have a graphical user interface within that Windows P instance, which will take care of all the deployment work. Again, being that it's standard technology, it imports directly into System Center Configuration Manager. So as of today, there is not a plug-in installation procedure where you run an executable and you tie all that into System Center. It's more of a manual integration and kind of take over the operating system deployment tasks from SCCM, but it's initiated by SCCM and can use all the targeting and task sequencing that's provided there.
Great. Thanks, Eric. Oh, Dale wants to know, can SmartDeploy automatically add the machine into the domain when an image is deployed?
Yeah, so domain join is one of the questions that you'll be prompted for during the deployment wizard. Again, that takes place in the boot media. So you'll be prompted for the domain name in fully qualified domain name format, and optionally you can specify an organizational unit to put that machine in as well. But once the deployment's done, you're Control-Delete, ready to go with the user login.
Great. And what about deploying applications after the machine is deployed? Does SmartDeploy help with this process?
Yeah, today, most of our customers put all of their applications on their reference system and subsequently capture it. So at deployment time, it has not only the operating system, but all the line of business applications. And we make that process really easy. But to your point, we can script application install at deployment time. But beyond that, we're kind of done, meaning 6 months down the road, if you just want to update Acrobat Reader or something like that, we're not a good fit for that scenario.
Thanks, Spencer. Larry wants to know, is it necessary to defrag the system once the image is ready for use?
No. So the way that the deployment works is a brand new partition structure is created on the endpoint. So you're not taking the traditional sector-based image, which also contains all the fragmented files and everything like that that would be on the target or on the source device. The way that it works is new partitions are created, files are laid down in contiguous format so that everything's ready to go and there's no fragmentation of the hard disk.
Thanks, Eric. Ralph wants to know what the turnaround time is for SmartDeploy to provide a new platform pack file for newly released hardware.
Yeah, generally that's one of the biggest benefits of working with our team is we're highly available and responsive and get you the information that you need turned around quickly with a high level of service and quality. So generally it's under 5 business days, and the process is pretty simple for getting a new platform pack. Sometimes it can be just a quick email exchange, generally 1 to 2 emails back and forth and you got what you need. In other scenarios, you know, Alan talked about some of those Panasonic Toughbooks. Those things can get tricky. They've got a ton of different drivers that all need to be installed in a really particular order, and it's a lot more helpful for us if we don't have that machine in inventory to have you guys ship it out. And if we have it here in-house, it just sidesteps any back and forth. We work on it, bang out the pack, post it to the website, and send your machine back for you. So it's really easy, and like I say, it's a 5 business day or less turnaround time typically.
Great, thanks, Spencer. Another question here, is it possible to make a configuration for machines and save it so it will be unattended? I ask this because we currently have a USB key that we use to deploy Windows 7 Enterprise with drivers for a majority of the Dell hardware that we use.
Yeah, so the deployment task is completely you can put an answer file around the deployment task and have it be unattended. And the way that's done is, again, in very simple format. You walk through the deployment wizard one time, you export an XML file which saves all the configuration data. So where that image is stored. If it's on the network, mapping the network drive to get back to that image file. Platform pack that's being used. If it's not named default and next to the image, you can specify a custom location. All that information is wrapped into XML. And then on the next deployment, it's either you get a countdown timer with the option to cancel the deployment. If you don't cancel, it takes off automatically and you don't have to enter any information. Or you can do it in a attended mode where it pre-populates all the information so that you actually have to make a decision to click next and complete the deployment.
Great, thanks, Eric. And another question, am I able to do a full deployment using your free trial software?
Yeah, so we had a question about some of the limitations about the trial, and it's only limited because it runs for a couple of weeks. It's fully functioning, you can use it and deploy to a live production system, and everything works like the purchase version would work.
Great, thanks, Spencer. Larry says on the trial version we noticed that the Windows 7 and Office product keys are not carried forward. Does the full product allow this?
Yeah, I mean, we'd have to work with you and support and see what happened there. It should work just fine. The optimal way is to, you know, when you run through the capture wizard and let's say you're capturing Windows 7, is to put your product key in the capture wizard, and it'll get saved into the metadata of the WIM. And then when you run the deploy wizard, you won't be asked for the product key. It'll use the one that's baked into the WIM, and that should work just fine. If you're talking about activation of product keys, then there's a post task that you can run to automatically activate Windows and Office. But yeah, in both cases it should work.
Yeah, and at a high level, we support all the SKUs from Windows XP forward, both desktop and server, and we can support, you know, OEM, retail, KMS, Mac, whatever scenario that you want to run in. The products will support that.
Great. Will SmartDeploy be able to run deployments for Windows 8?
Yeah, so oddly enough, Windows 8 Consumer Preview was just released earlier today, and that's something we've had on our radar since the developer preview and obviously, you know, information about it prior to the dev preview as well. And short answer to the question, yes, we'll be able to deploy Windows 8 upon RTM. And it'll be the same simple, streamlined process of basically, walking through the same steps for Windows 7 and XP.
Thanks, Eric. Is SmartDeploy able to deploy over the network?
Yeah, so in that architecture graph that I spoke to briefly, the optional components were deploying over the network, and there's a number of different ways that deployment over the network can be done. It can be done in unicast method, which is just connecting straight to a file share and pulling down that image file. There's also integration into Windows Deployment Services, which gives you the ability to deploy multicast images out over the network as well.
Thanks, Eric. Mike wants to know what the price model looks like for SmartDeploy.
Yeah, so currently it's on a per machine basis. And what per machine means, you need a licensed copy of SmartDeploy for all the machines in your environment that you want to use it on. So if you have 100 machines today and you do a big rollout and all 100 machines you use SmartDeploy on all 100 machines, you need 100 licenses. However, if next year or 2 years down the road, let's just say, for example, you do lease returns and you ship all those 100 machines back and you order 100 new, you don't need to buy any additional licenses. The licenses are required for what's in production. But if you go up and you buy 150 computers this time, then you need to buy the additional 50.
Great, thanks, Spencer. Okay, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up for today. Like I said, we've been recording this session and we'll send out a link. We have one other quick question coming in. Does SmartDeploy create local user IDs?
So user IDs or user accounts can be created on the virtual reference machine, and then those will be deployed. If you want to create a task or something like that, you could, do net user, create a new user account that way as well. It doesn't tie into Active Directory where it would create you a new domain account or anything like that.
Great. Thanks, Eric. Okay, we're going to wrap this up. Watch for a follow-up email tomorrow. It'll contain a link to the recorded session. Also, take a moment and go sign up for the SmartDeploy Challenge. It's just smartdeploy.com/challenge. A quick little questionnaire form to sign up, and then attend a demo, get your free Skull Candy earbuds, and learn more about SmartDeploy. We can really simplify and streamline your processes using our tools. So take a moment to just learn a little bit more about us, and thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate you taking the time to be here. We look forward to working with you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.